Roots. That's the theme of the month. Rootedness. Being how I am, I end up going to look it up to see roots. Okay, roots. Rootedness. Is that even a word? I don't know if it is a word or not, but it is now. When I think of roots, I, of course, like you, think of plants and trees. And someone thought of that when they did our program. You see in the front there is a tree. Did you notice it's missing something? Anybody notice what's missing on there?
There are 4 different ones, Ken.
Ah, are there roots on some of them? Ah, mine did not have roots, okay. This one has roots. This one has roots. I remember us having a exercise where someone had us do that. We were asked to draw a tree, and many people did not include the roots. Because we don't see it. And that's the thing, is when I look at you, I look at all you folks and I meet you, I don't really know what your roots are. And that's, except for Wayne in the back. And the reason why is because his roots, and my roots as far as where we come from, where we were brought up, born, and sent in the Mohawk Valley. After I speak to him, Bill and I are going to share a song just about that, about a song that I wrote about that. How about you? When someone says to you, or I don't know if you know, because this is the first week of the month of the service, when someone says to you, so what are your roots? What do you answer? You know, and I know, as I say, mine is Mohawk Valley. That's what I will say as far as my family is concerned, where I was born. For some people, the roots. I was talking with someone this past week, and she had to sit there and just realize, my roots are, I don't know, I didn't really have a place where I can consider to say, that's where my roots are. So I guess she kind of felt a little bit uprooted. And that's the thing, she also made a statement when I was talking about this church. She said, probably all you youths are probably uprooted. I don't know if, a generalization like that is a good thing, but I was wondering, what if that's true? So it made me end up thinking about that as far as my uprootedness. And why did I even come to this building? Why did I even come to this church? What made me walk through this door? As I said, I was born in Herkimer. Anybody know where that is? Drive along the thruway, exit 30. I used to be in a band called the Exit 30 Booze Boys Blues Band, so if you ever remember that. And you'll see the college up on the hill. That's Herkimer County Community College. I actually went through K through 12 in the school systems, and I went to the community college in Herkimer. So I am strongly rooted in the Mohawk Valley. As far as my family roots, my father is European in background, and so Hutton, it sounds Germanic, but it's English, so I'm assuming it's Anglo-Saxon. That was my assumption of that. So that's where my name is, but of course I've got a whole bunch of other, because as you know, there's not a lot of pure breed coming out of there. So, and my mom's came from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and she was of Eastern European heritage, Polish and Russian. So I have a nice little mix going on there, and my mom was uprooted. My mom was, my father met my mother on the troop train during World War II. He was in the Marines, he had served at Guadalcanal, and she was a WAC, Women's Army Corps, for those people who remember. I wouldn't have known either, except my mom was a WAC. So she was from Milwaukee and kind of got uprooted, and when she came here, and as I was brought up, we did not have a church. We did not go to church. We would, coming up Thanksgiving, we would say that once a year grace thing. That was it. That was our one moment of the year where we talked about religion at all. And my mom was Catholic. She was a discontented, and she ended up repeating more than a couple times, and that's why I can repeat it with clarity. She just said it was this Pope driving in this the Bishop of Milwaukee, driving in this black fancy car, and he had all these fancy outfits, and he was fat, and he looked like he was eating good. And here, my mother was giving 10%. So I just completely rejected the Catholic Church. So that was kind of given to me from my mom's side. And my father, again, he just didn't go to church. Now, I think if you had said, what religion are you, he probably would have said Christian, and I think even Methodist might have been something he had said, but that was about as far as that went. So when I moved from my hometown and moved to Rochester, I was uprooted, and I felt a lot of pain about feeling disconnected and lonely, and I remember going to the church. That was my answer. Well, I remember saying, I got to join the military, or I got to do something to change the way I feel, and I went to church. And I tried church, and I didn't find that at that time it had anything for me. So I gave it a try, I thought, and he said, no, that didn't work. So I felt uprooted. And when I feel that feeling, that's when I start to feel like I need something. And faith, religion, something solid, something that I can turn to. And the reason why I say that is because what drove me to come to this door was at the church that I was at, and what had started to happen was a conservative element started to come into this church. And what ended up happening was that there's things, the Apostles' Creed, anybody's familiar with that, the Apostles' Creed was somewhere in the back of the hymnal, but it wasn't anything that we really said it very much. Once in a while it would be read, and I was like, okay, that's the Apostles' Creed. But I didn't think much of it. But what started happening was they were doing it every week. And actually I noticed that people were memorizing. You know how some of us have already memorized the chalice lighting and whatever, we can say it. But people were doing this Apostles' Creed. Those people are not familiar with it. One of the things that it says, I believe. It's a creed. It says, I believe, whatever. And in this, one of the things they say, I believe in the miracles. I believe in the Immaculate Conception. I believe in the Trinity. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And I was going, uh-oh. I didn't believe any of it. I did not believe it. I tried, though. I honestly did. I said, you know what? There's something wrong with me. I just don't believe it. I've got to believe it because I want to be part of the group. I want to be in, And I couldn't. So I was out of a church. I was uprooted. My spiritual feet, where do I go now? Well, as I said, I ended up hearing a friend of mine say that he was attending the Unitarian Universalist church out where he used to preach morning. What's that? Not out near Buffalo. Amherst, I think it was. What he was doing, somewhere, he was out there. And I thought, gosh, if this guy can do, if he's going to that, and I like him, you know what I mean? I says, maybe I'll find out what this Unitarian Universalist thing's all about. So I went online. And they had these questions, and they had these things about, are you do this, that, and I went, oh my gosh, check, yes, yes, yes. I mean, I was a Unitarian Universalist ever since I was a kid. Ever since I was a kid, I was a UU, and I didn't know it. I became, by profession, I became a social studies teacher, So I was teaching cultures and teaching about this stuff. It just fit right in like saying, Unitarian, yeah, this all fits in. And that's what I've learned is that for a lot of for me, and then for the people who, where did this UU church come from? Who were these people? A lot of them had the same problem that I did. That's what I've learned in my studies of UUism. And that's what I appreciated when I came here. I ended up not only taking UU 101 to learn about the history of the church, but I also got to teach it. And as you know, some people who teach, like that's how we learn sometimes, by teaching. And as Marcus Garvey said, a people without knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. So when I came here, that's what I started to learn about the UU Church. Where did it come from? It actually goes way back. You can look as far as how far back this goes. And it precedes the Council of Nicaea in 325. Now, those people not familiar with that council, it was a council that the Roman Catholic Church made decisions, and one of them was that the Trinity. They said the Trinity. There's Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Well, there were people who disagreed with them. And there were people like, and it started in the Reformation, this would be around the 16th century. There were people like Michael Servetus, who was born in 1511. And at the age of 19, he wrote a book called On the Errors of the Trinity. So he wrote a book on it, and he got in trouble for it. He got in trouble, and he ended up actually doing a lot more writing, and it was actually not the Catholic Church that ended up finally meeting his demise, but it was the Calvinists. And he was burned at the stake with the one book tied to his thigh because of his belief. He was a heretic. That's what they claimed, he was a heretic. So that's what we are, folks. A group of heretics. We commit heresy. And that's what I did when I left the Methodist. Well, actually, I was in a Bible study at the Methodist Church. When someone said something along that line about, they said, well, if you don't believe in the miracles, then what are you doing here? And I'm like, oh my gosh. He's right. I was a heretic. I don't believe him. Also, born in 1510 was Francis David. Am I pronouncing that right? It says David, but I know it's probably David. He was of Hungarian descent, and he ended up preaching against the doctrine of the Trinity in 1566. So in 1568, King Sigismund of Transylvania proclaimed an edict of religious toleration. 1568. That was in what today is Romania. So to this day, there are Unitarian churches in Romania. And what ended up happening was the people who were the Trinity people, who believed in Trinity, called them, you're a Unitarian. There was a derogatory, it's like, you're a Unitarian. And they're like, and they said, you know what, you're right. And they took it and said, fine. And that's when they first started using that term, Unitarian. At the same time, because of this, people familiar with the Protestant Reformation, there were a lot of challenges going on around Europe. In England, there was also challenges going on. It wasn't as drastic as in Europe, as in Southern Europe, where they were burning people at the stake. But nonetheless, there was persecution. And in 1615, John Biddle was born, father of the English Unitarians. He was a teacher. He was a teacher. And what ended up happening was he had to teach the kids. He had to teach, they said, you have to teach them the Bible. He said, okay. So again, he read it. That's where the problem is when you actually read the Bible, you start to go, wait a minute. Trinity, that doesn't make sense, what they were saying. So he started to taught it, and he ended up getting persecuted for it. Finally, he was banished, and he died in prison in 1662. So there are people who died for this belief, but they are our roots. Now, as far as the Universalist side of this, because people may not be familiar with, like, why are there two U's, you know? Well, the Universalist side of it was another liberal looking at Christianity. And that's the thing, these are all rooted in Christianity. It was another liberal looking at Christianity. But in this case, it had to do, at least the beginning of it, had specifically to do with salvation. If you're familiar with the Calvinists, what they said was there were certain people who were the elect, who were already predestined to go to heaven. And everybody else, you know, and that would mean probably all of us, we're done, you know what I mean? But and they were predestined to go to heaven. And so there were people who disagreed with that. And people said, you mean you already were condemned? So there were people who said, wait a minute, what about good works? And it's universal. Anyone who just does good works and good deeds has a way they can get into heaven. Universal. And that's where that term comes from, the Universalist. Now, as time has gone on, I mean, I think it has become more of a universal. Like everybody can have a relationship with God. Everybody can have that, because this was a Christian faith. Joseph Priestley, back to the Unitarians in England, Joseph Priestley, a scientist, and a Unitarian minister, had his laboratory and his home and his chapel, everything was burned because from people who were members of the Church of England. Again, why? Because he was a Unitarian. And he was saying, and this time he was saying that there was just one God, that's it. Jesus, okay, the scriptures are great, there's something to look at. The Holy Spirit, okay, the Holy Spirit comes through different people and they're inspired and this and that. But as far as like the Trinity, no. And that's why he was banished. He ended up having to come to America. He was invited by Thomas Jefferson to come to America. He knew Benjamin Franklin when he was in England. So again, getting the sense of who this is, you know, this is a time period of when people are starting to, you know, use their brain, they're starting to rationalize and think. And so Thomas Jefferson invited Joseph Priestley to come to America, and he established the American Unitarian churches in the Philadelphia area. So where does the churches come from in our United States? Pennsylvania, but also mostly Massachusetts. That's where a lot of this took place. So when you think about, you know, where did this come from? Where are our roots? And then it spread. It spread across the United States. And it evolved and grew and changed to where it is in the 20th century. And it ended up finally, it's a small faith. We have about 1,000 congregations. And it was realized that the Unitarians and the Universalists were small, but they had similar to the left, you know, ideas. So that's when they decided to unite. And my understanding is actually the youth first got together. They first started sharing things together, and they realized, and then it was when the adults got wise to it and said, that's a good idea. And so in 1961, I was 10 years old. In 1961, that's when they finally created the Unitarian Universalist Association that we know of today. So again, the roots. And I had a friend of mine, Gary, showed up here, and he asked me some questions about So what is a Unitarian Universalist? And that's the thing is, that's what I asked when I walked in the door here. When I walked in and saw Ralph Mann, and I ended up looking through this book. Here's one of the things that I saw. This is on Roman numeral 10. It's under the covenant. Did you know we have a covenant? We have a covenant. But underneath the covenant is the living tradition we share draws from many sources. Direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder, affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces that create and uphold life. Words and deeds of prophetic women and men which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Wisdom from the world's religions, which inspires us in our ethical and spiritual life. Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. Humanist teachings, which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science, and warn us against idolatries of mind and spirit. Pretty neat. And I read that, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm home. I'm home. So that's what I feel. I feel that to understand our home and our faith and what we're about, you need to understand the roots and not forget it. And I think this month that's what we'll be doing. When I joined the church 10 years ago, I was given this little pocket guide, the Unitarian Universalist. So everything you need to know right in there. And starting on page 57, our roots. So that's what I have to say. I stole a lot of what I just said right out of here. And that's what I need to do, is continue to understand my roots. Again, to go back to the idea of, because, if you have strong roots, then when the storms blow, you'll be rooted. And we do have storms that blow, and sometimes we need to be rooted and feel those roots. I was feeling that. I was feeling extremely vulnerable one day. Just so happened I was spending the weekend at the Abbey of the Genesee, and the river was going by, and I was just feeling very, very low, very empty. I started to sing, which is hard to do. And come out of me came a refrain to the song I'm going to share with you right now.
Baby in its mother's womb, or a bear cub in its den. Join us for worship every Sunday at 10 a.m. at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua, a welcoming congregation. We are located at 3024 Cooley Road, 4 miles west of South Main Street, Canandaigua, just north of the intersection with Routes 5 and 20. Look for the blue signs just before the turn. Your comments about this program or questions about the church are welcome at 585-396-1370 or at our website, www.canandaiguauu.org. Producer and editor, Daniel Brigham.